My brother said, "Your showing up will ruin everything. Keep your weird kid away too. Just stay away." I did not respond. I recalled the $45,000 wire transfer for his destination wedding. For days later, at the resort, his card declined, and my mom was red-faced, calling me over and over. The message glowed in the dim light of my living room, the harsh white text on my phone screen burning into my retinas. I am Delphine. I am 34 years old, the director of supply chain logistics for a major retail distributor, and a single mother who has spent her entire life cleaning up other people's messes. Up until that exact second, I was also the sole financial architect keeping my older brother Evander from total ruin. I read his text message again, my eyes scanning the cruel words over and over. I traced the letters with my thumb, feeling the sharp, agonizing sting of family betrayal settle deep into my chest like a physical weight. This was not a sudden argument. This was not a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a calculated, deliberate execution of our relationship. I slowly looked up from the glowing screen. Across the soft, cream-colored living room rug, my 7-year-old daughter Aloan was sitting perfectly still. She had spent the last 2 hours carefully organizing her wooden building blocks. She did not sort them by size or shape, but by the exact shade of color, creating a beautiful, gradient rainbow across the floor. She was a quiet, deeply observant, and highly intelligent child who loved structure and hated loud, unpredictable noises. Aloan noticed my frozen expression immediately. Her little hands, which had been hovering over a pale yellow block, stopped moving. She looked at me, her big brown eyes welling up with unwarranted guilt and anxiety. "Mommy," she whispered, her tiny voice trembling in the quiet room. "Did my blocks make too much noise? Is that why Uncle Evander is mad at us?" That single question shattered my heart into a million irreparable pieces. My beautiful little girl, who had spent 3 entire weeks drawing a gorgeous, intricate wedding card for her uncle, was sitting on the floor blaming her own existence for his cruelty. Aloan is not weird. She is a genius at spatial reasoning who just needs a quiet, calm environment to thrive. But to Evander, she was a liability. To him, her sensitivity was a defect that would ruin his perfect, highly curated aesthetic. I swallowed the heavy lump in my throat and forced a gentle, reassuring smile onto my face. "No, my sweet bug," I told her softly, walking over to kneel beside her and kiss the top of her head. "You are perfect. Your blocks are beautiful. Uncle Evander is just confused right now." But inside, my blood was turning into ice. A profound, terrifying clarity washed over me, stripping away decades of guilt and obligation. Evander did not know that he had just crossed the point of no return. He thought I was just the obedient little sister who would cry, complain to our mother, and ultimately accept the humiliation to keep the peace. He had completely forgotten who was actually holding the keys to his kingdom. I was the one managing the risk. I was the one who had spent the last 6 months organizing his massive, over-budget destination wedding at the Emerald Glasshouse Resort. And most importantly, I was the person whose name was legally attached to the escrow account holding the final payment. Evander wanted to banish us to the shadows so he could shine under the spotlight. He wanted to cut us out like an infection. So, I decided to give him exactly what he asked for. The only problem for him was that taking myself out of the equation meant taking my money with me. What happens when the golden child loses his endless supply of gold? Let me tell you, it is not a pretty sight. To fully understand why I held the financial strings to Evander's dream wedding, you have to understand the deeply toxic family dynamics that had governed my entire life from the moment I was born. I grew up in a household where peace was something I always had to purchase with my own sacrifice. Evander was the undeniable golden child. He was 38 years old, a regional sales manager with a closet full of tailored designer suits, leased luxury cars, and a crippling need to look like a millionaire startup founder. He was all flash, completely devoid of substance, and a master at playing the victim whenever his fragile house of cards inevitably collapsed. My mother, Hestia, was his eternal, unwavering enabler. She was a retired school teacher who treated Evander's massive mistakes like natural disasters, unavoidable acts of God that everyone else simply had to pitch in and clean up. When I was 18 years old, working double shifts at a greasy local diner all summer to save for college, Evander borrowed our uncle's heavy-duty truck for a weekend party. He crashed it into a brick wall. He had been drinking, and he was terrified of getting a police record because he had a big corporate interview coming up that month. My mother cornered me in the cramped kitchen. She cried. She begged. She told me, "Evander is just finding his way, Delphine. He is under so much stress and just needs a win. You're the strong one, you can handle it." She manipulated me into draining my entire college savings, every single dollar I had scrubbed floors and served coffee for, to pay for the truck repairs under the table so our uncle would never know. She promised he would pay me back with his first paycheck. He never did. That was the foundation of our family drama. The museum of my pain was filled with exhibits just like that one. The most painful exhibit, however, happened 6 years ago. I was 28 years old, physically exhausted, and heavily pregnant with Eloan. Despite the fatigue, I had spent months drafting a brilliant, comprehensive business plan for a coastal warehousing logistics company. I left the heavy binder on my kitchen counter one afternoon. Evander saw it, took it without asking, and pitched it to a group of private investors as his own brainchild. Because he had the charm and the expensive suit, they believed him. He launched the company, ran it straight into the ground within 8 months due to his secret gambling habits and terrible management, and left a trail of furious creditors. When I confronted him about stealing my intellectual property, he laughed right in my face. He told me ideas were cheap and execution was everything. My mother, as always, told me to let it go because family is family and holding grudges is toxic. I learned back then that I was nothing more than an automatic teller machine to them. I was the safety net they deeply resented but constantly abused. So why did I agree to fund his wedding? Because I thought I was protecting the one innocent person involved. His fiancée, Bryony. Bryony was 29, an incredibly smart, fiercely independent woman from a wealthy, respectable family. She had no idea that Evander was drowning in secret debt. He had maxed out every credit card he owned trying to keep up with her family's lavish lifestyle. When the resort demanded proof of funds for the wedding, Evander had come to my house, dropped to his knees, and wept uncontrollably. He swore he had changed. He swore he would lose the love of his life if I did not co-sign the wedding agreements. Against my better judgment, the ghost of my mother's voice echoed in my head, and I agreed to help. But this time, I set strict boundaries. Little did I know, those very boundaries were about to become the weapon of his destruction. Because of my extensive background in supply chain risk management, I did not just hand Evander a blank check and wish him luck. I knew far better than that. I set up a strict, legally binding escrow fund to protect myself. I deposited $60,000 of my own hard-earned money into an account that only I controlled. I signed the master contract with the Emerald Glass House myself. The agreement was crystal clear. I would pay the vendors directly from the escrow account. Evander had a secondary authorized user card linked to the account, but it had a strict, non-negotiable limit for minor, unexpected expenses like extra boutonnieres, last-minute vendor tips, or small decorations. The massive final payment for the venue, the premium catering, the top-tier open bar, and the extravagant floral installations was scheduled to be wired exactly 4 days before the ceremony. That amount was exactly $45,000. For the first few months, things seemed entirely manageable. Evander played the part of the grateful, reformed brother perfectly. He thanked me at family dinners. He sent me small gifts. But as the wedding approached, the mask started to slip, revealing the ugly truth underneath. It began with a phone call from my mother, Hestia. It was a Tuesday evening, exactly 1 week before the wedding. I was cooking dinner, chopping vegetables, when my phone rang. Hestia sounded incredibly nervous, clearing her throat multiple times before finally getting to the point. "Delphine," she started, her voice dripping with that familiar, sickeningly sweet manipulation. "Evander is just so stressed about the aesthetic of the ceremony. Bryony's family is very high society, you know. We were thinking, maybe it would be better if Aloan did not wear her flower girl dress. Actually, maybe it would be best if you two just stayed in the hotel room during the main event. She gets so startled by clapping, and Evander hired a very expensive drone videographer. We cannot have her having an episode and ruining the footage. I stood frozen by the stove, the knife slipping from my hand and clattering against the cutting board. My own mother was asking me to erase my child for the sake of a video aesthetic. I gripped the cool marble counter, my knuckles turning stark white. She is a 7-year-old girl, Mom, I said, my voice dangerously low and vibrating with restrained anger. She is not a prop you can just hide in a closet when it is inconvenient for your perfect pictures. Hestia sighed heavily, immediately playing the victim. Delphine, please do not be difficult right now. You know how much pressure your brother is under to impress these people. Just be the bigger person for once. Do it for the family. I hung up the phone without saying goodbye, my hands shaking with rage. That conversation was the warning tremor before the devastating earthquake. 2 days later, the text message from Evander arrived. The one where he dropped the polite, grateful act completely. The one where he called my beautiful, brilliant daughter a weird kid and ordered me to stay away from the exact event I was entirely paying for. He truly believed he had won the game. He believed the $45,000 wire, which had been automatically initiated that morning and was pending clearance, was locked in and untouchable. He thought he could finally discard the ATM machine because the cash had already been dispensed. He was so arrogant, so blinded by his own perceived cleverness, that he forgot basic banking procedures. Tell me, where are you watching from? And would you let your own mother speak about your child that way? Let me know in the comments, because what I did next changed our family forever. I did not reply to Evander's cruel text message. I did not call him screaming. I did not call my mother to beg for justice or demand an apology. Emotional outbursts were exactly what they expected from me. They thrived on drama because it meant they were controlling the narrative, keeping me off balance. But I was done playing my assigned role in this toxic family theater. I sat down at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and logged into my secure corporate banking portal. The screen illuminated my face in a cold, blue light, reflecting the absolute shift in my soul. I navigated through the menus to the escrow account management tab. There it was, right at the top of the ledger. The pending wire transfer to the Emerald Glass House. $45,000. Status indicated as processing. I hovered my mouse over the transaction details. My heart was not racing. My hands were not shaking. I felt an absolute, terrifying calm. It was the calm of a woman who had finally been pushed past the point of forgiveness, a woman who realized she had the power to end the cycle of abuse with a single click. I clicked on the action menu next to the transaction. A small drop-down box appeared. I selected the option labeled Recall Wire. A pop-up window appeared on the screen, warning me that canceling this transaction could result in severe vendor penalties, loss of deposits, and a complete breach of contract. I read every word. I checked the box confirming I understood the immense financial risks. Then I clicked Submit. The screen refreshed. The loading wheel spun for 2 agonizing seconds. Then, the new text appeared. Status indicated as recalled and canceled. Funds returned to the primary account. Just like that, I cut off the financial oxygen to his fairy tale life. But I did not just stop there. I went into the card management settings and permanently deactivated his authorized user card. I froze every single line of credit attached to my name. I closed the vault and threw away the key. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply removed the oxygen from his financial fantasy. I closed my laptop with a soft click and walked back into the living room. Aloan was still looking at me nervously, her beautiful wooden blocks forgotten on the rug. I knelt down beside her and gave her the biggest, tightest hug, burying my face in her soft hair. "We are not going to the wedding, Bug," I told her, my voice bright, steady, and completely free of fear. "We are going to do something much better. We are going to drive down to the coast and spend the whole weekend at the marine aquarium. We are going to see the sea turtles and eat ice cream for dinner." Her face lit up like a brilliant sunrise. "Really?" she gasped, the heavy anxiety vanishing from her eyes instantly. Really, I promised. I thought I was just cutting off his party funds. I thought I was simply serving him a plate of well-deserved family revenge to teach him a lesson about respect. I had absolutely no idea that my simple act of recalling that wire transfer was about to detonate a massive corporate fraud scheme. I was about to peel back the layers of a lie so deep, so twisted, that it would destroy everything he had ever built and expose him to the entire world. Once Aloan was tucked safely into bed and fast asleep, the logistics director inside me woke up with a vengeance. Something about Evander's extreme arrogance did not sit right with me. Why was he so confident in banning me so aggressively? He had always been utterly terrified of losing my financial support. To ban me so viciously meant he either thought the money was completely untouchable, or he was hiding something so monumental that my physical presence at the wedding was a massive threat to his survival. I opened my laptop again, poured myself a large cup of black coffee, and began a full, uncompromising forensic audit of the escrow account's secondary card history. I exported the last 3 months of transactions into a complex spreadsheet and started sorting the data by vendor name, date, and amount. I expected to see unauthorized charges for expensive cigars, custom groomsmen gifts, luxury spa treatments for Bryony, or maybe some overpriced champagne. But as I scrolled through the dense columns of data, a glaring, terrifying anomaly jumped off the screen. Over the past 90 days, there were 3 separate, massive charges billed to a company called Lorcan Event Logistics. The first charge was for $5,000. The second charge, processed 3 weeks later, was for $6,000. The final charge, processed just last week, was for $7,500. That was a total of $18,500 paid out for event consulting. I stared at the screen, my brow furrowing in deep confusion. The Emerald Glasshouse was an ultra-premium venue that provided an all-inclusive, highly trained wedding planner. We absolutely did not hire an outside logistics consultant. I copied the company name and ran a deep, extensive search through the state business registry database. The results loaded on my screen, and they made my blood run ice cold. Lorcan Event Logistics was a limited liability company registered to a residential apartment address. I recognized that address instantly. It belonged to Lorcan, Evander's old college roommate and current drinking buddy. Lorcan knew absolutely nothing about high-end event planning. He sold used gym equipment on the internet. The puzzle pieces snapped together with horrifying clarity, forming a picture of pure criminality. Evander was not just overspending on flowers or alcohol. He was committing deliberate financial fraud. He was creating fake invoices through his friend's shell company to systematically drain my credit limit and convert it into hard, untraceable cash. He was stealing directly from me to line his own pockets. But why? Even for Evander, a scam of this size and audacity was incredibly risky. He was desperate for liquid cash, and he needed it urgently before the wedding. The question was, what was he trying to fund? Or more accurately, who was he trying to pay off? The answer to that question was about to land right in my lap the very next morning, proving that sweet revenge is sometimes served directly by the universe itself. The next morning, exactly 3 days before the wedding, my phone rang while I was packing our bags for the aquarium trip. The caller ID showed Tamsin, Bryony's younger sister. Tamsin was 26, sharp-witted, fiercely protective of her sister, and genuinely kind. I had always liked her. I answered the phone cautiously, assuming she was calling to ask why I had officially dropped out of the wedding party. "Hey Delphine," Tamsin said, sounding incredibly stressed and out of breath. "I am so sorry to bother you so early, but I am helping organize the final seating chart and I am really confused. Evander handed me the updated layout this morning, and he completely crossed out the VIP table seats for you and Aloan. He replaced you guys with 2 men named Richard and Gregory from the Apex Investment Group. Did you ask to be moved to the back?" I stopped breathing. The room seemed to spin. "The Apex Investment Group? Tamsin, what are you talking about?" I asked, my voice tight and strained. "Why are venture capitalists sitting at the family table?" Tamsin sighed heavily into the receiver. "I don't know. Evander said it was a surprise for Bryony. He gave the audiovisual guy a flash drive this morning to test on the main projector in the ballroom. It is some big presentation he is doing right after the first dance. I grabbed a copy of the slides because I need to cue the lighting to match the mood, but it looks like a massive corporate pitch. Hang on, I will email the file to you right now. 30 seconds later, the file hit my inbox. I opened the presentation, and the sheer audacity of what I was looking at made me physically dizzy. The title slide, rendered in sleek, professional graphics, read, "The Family Coastal Logistics Project." The next 20 slides were detailed, highly confidential financial breakdowns of the massive warehouse supply chain network that I had spent the last 5 years building from scratch for my employer. But my name was nowhere on the documents. Evander had photoshopped the corporate logos, replaced my name with his own, and positioned himself as the sole CEO and heir to a multi-million-dollar logistics empire. The final slide was a bold call to action asking for a $600,000 seed investment to expand operations, aimed directly at the apex investors who were now sitting in my chair. The ironic link was almost poetic. He wasn't just stealing my money through fake invoices. He was stealing my life's work. He was using the luxury wedding I paid for as a high-end networking event to scam wealthy venture capitalists, using the business I built as bait to lure them in. He didn't ban Aloan because she was noisy. He banned me because if I walked into that reception hall and saw my own warehouses on that massive projector, his entire criminal empire would collapse in 5 seconds flat. He thought he had outsmarted everyone. But the deadline for his $45,000 payment was exactly 72 hours away, and his safety net was completely gone. If you are loving this unhinged family drama so far, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling me what city you are living in. Every comment helps the video reach more people who need to hear this. Thank you so much. Now let's get back to the absolute bloodbath. The absolute fallout began the night before the wedding. It was pouring rain in Oregon, the kind of chilling, relentless downpour that makes you want to lock all your doors and turn off the lights. I was zipping up Aloan's little suitcase for our aquarium trip when the pounding started. It was loud, aggressive, frantic knocking that visibly shook the front door frame. I checked the security camera feed on my phone. It was Evander. He was soaking wet, pacing back and forth on my porch in an expensive designer jacket, his tie loosened, his face twisted in absolute, primal panic. He had tried to buy a round of incredibly expensive cigars at the resort bar an hour ago to impress his investor buddies, and the secondary card had declined. The illusion was violently cracking. I walked to the front door, leaving the heavy steel security chain fully engaged, and opened it just a few inches. The cold, wet wind howled through the crack, blowing rain into the hallway. "Open the door, Delphine," he demanded, his voice shaking with a volatile mixture of uncontrollable rage and pure terror. "Restore the account right now. You are embarrassing me in front of Bryony's family and my business partners." I looked at him, completely unbothered by his tantrum. "The account is permanently closed, Evander," I said calmly, my voice steady against the storm. "I do not finance people who ban my daughter from family events." He gripped the edge of the door, his knuckles turning stark white as he tried to pull it open. "This is not about Aloan, and you know it," he spat, his mask completely falling off to reveal the monster underneath. "You are just jealous. You are jealous because Bryony is perfect and her family is elite, and you are just a miserable single mother with a broken kid who cannot even handle a loud room without crying. You are ruining my life because no man wants you." The cruelty in his voice was meant to break me. Years ago, it would have. I would have cried, apologized, and transferred the money. But now, all I felt was profound pity for the pathetic, weak man standing in the rain. I tapped my fingers lightly against the door frame, a habit I had when auditing failed contracts. "Are you done?" I asked softly. "Because screaming at me will not fix your actual problem. Your venue requires the final $45,000 wire tomorrow morning at exactly 11 o'clock. If that money does not clear, the Emerald Glass House will lock the ballroom doors. Good luck explaining that to your wealthy investors, Mr. CEO. Drive safe. I slammed the door in his face and slid the deadbolt home with a loud, satisfying click. My phone immediately started buzzing. It was my mother, Hestia, calling repeatedly, acting as his flying monkey to guilt-trip me into compliance. I turned my phone completely off, tossed it onto the kitchen counter, and went to sleep. Tomorrow was going to be a very big day. The morning of the wedding arrived with brilliantly clear skies and bright sunshine. While the guests were busy getting dressed in their expensive silk gowns and tailored suits at the luxury resort, I was holding Alohan's hand as we walked into the coastal marine sanctuary. It was a beautiful, deeply peaceful place. We stood in front of a massive glass tank, watching a majestic sea turtle glide effortlessly through the crystal-clear water. Alohan was smiling, her eyes wide with pure wonder, completely safe from the toxic chaos of our family. I checked my smartwatch. It was 10:55 in the morning. Hour zero was rapidly approaching. 3 hours away at the Emerald Glass House, the highly professional venue manager was sitting in her plush office, pulling up the master billing file for Evander's wedding. At exactly 11 o'clock, she initiated the final manual sweep for the $45,000 payment. The system paused. The loading wheel spun. And then, the glaring red letters appeared on her screen. Payment failed. Account terminated. I wasn't there to see it with my own eyes, but Tamsin told me exactly how the beautiful massacre unfolded. The manager walked out to the main lobby, her face a mask of practiced neutrality, and quietly pulled Evander aside. She informed him that the wire had been recalled and the primary escrow account was closed. Evander, sweating profusely in his custom tuxedo, tried to play it off. He laughed nervously, claiming it was just a silly bank error, and pulled out his personal black credit card. The manager ran it through the terminal. Declined. He pulled out a second card. Declined. He frantically opened his banking app on his phone, his hands shaking, trying to move money from the Lorcan Event Logistics scam funds, but the transfers were frozen due to suspicious activity flags triggered by my fraud report. By 11:15, the panic could no longer be contained or hidden. The resort staff, adhering strictly to their corporate policy, stopped setting up the tables in the grand ballroom. The catering crew turned off the massive ovens. The florists began packing up the expensive arches of white roses. The venue manager walked into the lounge and made a loud, clear announcement to the confused wedding party. She stated clearly that due to a complete failure of payment, the reception, the 5-course dinner, the open bar, and the ballroom access were immediately canceled. They were only authorized to use the outdoor lawn for a 15-minute standing ceremony, with no chairs, no music, and no sound system. The fairy tale was officially over. The carriage had turned into a pumpkin, and the prince was exposed as a complete fraud. Total, unmitigated chaos erupted in the resort lobby. My mother, Hestia, was crying hysterically, her face beet red, trying to call me from 5 different phones, begging anyone who would listen to loan them money. Evander was pacing like a trapped animal, shouting at the venue manager, threatening to sue them, claiming his sister was having a severe mental breakdown and holding his funds hostage out of spite. He was desperately trying to spin the narrative, painting himself as the tragic victim of my supposed insanity. But he forgot about Tamsin. Tamsin had watched the entire meltdown from the staircase. She had seen the declined cards. She put the pieces together. She pulled out her phone, opened the massive email I had sent her late last night containing the entire forensic audit, the Lorcan invoices, and the stolen pitch deck, and walked straight into the bridal suite. Bryony was sitting in front of a mirror, wearing a stunning, hand-beaded silk gown, looking like absolute royalty. Tamsin locked the heavy oak door behind her, walked over to her sister, and handed her the phone. "Look at this," Tamsin said quietly. "All of it." Bryony read the emails in dead silence. She saw the fake Lorcan invoices used to steal cash. She saw the corporate pitch deck using my business to scam the Apex investors. And finally, she read the screenshot of the text message Evander had sent me, calling Alohan weird and banning us to hide his crimes. Bryony did not scream. She did not cry or ruin her immaculate makeup. She was a woman of immense pride and intellect. She stood up, smoothed the skirt of her heavy wedding dress, and walked out of the bridal suite with the posture of a queen walking to an execution. She marched straight into the main lobby, pushing past the crying relatives and the utterly confused groomsmen. She walked right up to Evander, who was currently lying through his teeth to the Apex investors, telling them the catering delay was a minor logistical error. Bryony held up Tamsin's phone, the screen displaying the fraudulent pitch deck for everyone to see. Evander's face drained of all color. He looked like he had seen a ghost. "Bryony, honey, let me explain," he stammered, reaching out for her hand. Bryony slapped his hand away with a resounding crack. Her voice was ice-cold and carried across the silent lobby. "You stole money from your sister to fund your fake lifestyle," she stated clearly, making absolutely sure the investors heard every single word. "You built a fake company to scam my guests. And you banned a 7-year-old child from our wedding to hide your miserable, pathetic fraud. You disgust me." She reached up, pulled the massive diamond engagement ring off her finger, and threw it directly at his chest. The ring bounced off his lapel and hit the marble floor with a sharp clink. "The wedding is over," she announced. Bryony turned on her heel and walked out the front doors of the resort, leaving Evander standing in the total wreckage of his own making. The aftermath of that day was absolute, uncompromising devastation for the golden boy. Within a single month, Evander lost absolutely everything he had spent his life pretending to have. The Apex investors, furious at the blatant attempt to defraud them at a social event, reported Evander to the State Commerce Commission. While he narrowly avoided actual jail time because no money had officially changed hands yet, the intense investigation triggered a severe background check at his actual corporate job. His employer discovered he had been running the Lorcan event logistics scam using company time, company computers, and corporate resources. He was fired immediately, stripped of his lucrative severance package, and permanently blacklisted from the regional sales industry. He was left with a massive, crushing pile of debt. The venue kept his enormous initial deposits, and he still owed them roughly $60,000 for the custom orders, the wasted catering food, and the floral arrangements that could not be refunded. He owed Bryony's family for the portions of the wedding they had already paid for. With no job and his credit completely destroyed by my fraud report and subsequent freeze, he was evicted from his luxury downtown apartment. He had to sell his expensive designer clothes, his luxury watches, and the massive truck he leased just to look successful. He was reduced to packing his miserable life into cardboard boxes and moving into the damp, unfinished basement of my mother's house. Bryony moved to a different state entirely, taking a high-paying job in corporate law and leaving the nightmare behind. She sent Aloan a beautiful set of professional watercolors in the mail with a handwritten note that said, "Keep painting your beautiful world and never let anyone make you feel small." The toxic bubble had finally burst, and the reality of who Evander truly was had been brutally exposed to the entire town. He could no longer hide behind expensive tailored suits and my bank account. He was forced to look in the mirror every single day and see the massive failure he had always been terrified of becoming. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a single finger to destroy him. I just stopped being his shield and let gravity do the rest. 3 long, agonizing weeks after the canceled wedding, the doorbell rang at my house. It was a gloomy, overcast Tuesday afternoon. I opened the door to find my mother, Hestia, standing on the porch. She looked 10 years older. Her hair was unkempt, the dark circles under her eyes were prominent, and the arrogant, demanding posture she usually carried was entirely gone. She asked, in a small, broken voice, if she could come in. I stepped aside, leaving the door open. She walked into the living room and saw Aloan building a massive, incredibly complex domino tower in the corner, completely at peace in her quiet environment. Hestia sat heavily on the edge of the sofa and burst into loud, racking tears. She cried for a long time, apologizing profusely into her hands. She told me she was so incredibly sorry for everything. She swore she had no idea Evander was actually stealing from me, or that he was trying to scam real investors. She finally admitted that Evander had drained her small retirement savings to pay off a massive gambling debt 3 years ago, and she had kept it a secret from me out of deep, paralyzing shame. She looked at me with desperate, pleading eyes, hoping I would comfort her. Hoping I would fall back into my old role as the family fixer and offer to pay off his new debts to make the pain go away. I looked at her, feeling absolutely nothing but a hollow, distant pity. I practiced my absolute, zero-tolerance boundary. "You are not sorry because Alohan was hurt, Mom," I said, my voice eerily calm and devoid of all emotion. "You are not sorry that he insulted your beautiful granddaughter. You are only sorry because your golden boy has finally lost his shine, and now he is living in your basement, draining your grocery budget, and you have to deal with his massive mess all by yourself without my money to buffer the blow." Hestia flinched violently, as if I had physically struck her across the face. "Delphine, please," she sobbed, reaching out for my hand. "We are family." I shook my head slowly, stepping out of her reach. "No, Mom. Family protects each other. You protected him unconditionally, and you served me to the wolves whenever it was convenient for you. I am done being the sacrificial lamb, so he can play pretend. You are welcome to visit Alohan, but you will never ask me for a single dollar ever again, and Evander is never allowed on my property. If he shows up here, I will call the police immediately. We are done playing this game." Hestia left my house looking like a completely broken woman. It was harsh, but it was the only language she understood. The house was incredibly quiet after she finally left. I walked over to the corner of the living room where Alohan was putting the finishing touches on her massive domino tower. It was a complex, beautiful spiral of blue and green tiles that stood nearly 2 feet tall. She placed the final piece with immense, careful precision, her little face glowing with absolute pride. She looked up at me and smiled, a bright, genuine smile. "Mommy, it is really nice when it is quiet in here," she said softly. "We do not need noisy people. We just need us." I sat down on the soft rug next to her, tears of genuine happiness and immense relief pricking my eyes. "You are absolutely right, my brilliant girl," I whispered, kissing her warm cheek. "We only need us." Looking back at the absolute wreckage of the past few months, I realized a profound, life-changing truth. For my entire life, I had been systematically conditioned to believe that setting a boundary was an act of cruelty. I was taught that saying no made me a villain, a selfish daughter, a bad sister. But a boundary is not a punishment. A boundary is a fortress. It is a safe harbor you build to protect the things that are truly sacred in your life. Stopping the wire transfer did not destroy Evander's life. Evander's greed, his lies, and his arrogance destroyed his own life. I simply stopped paying the premium on his insurance policy against consequence. I finally understood that walking away from a highly toxic system is the greatest victory you can ever achieve. I did not need an apology from him. I did not need my mother to validate my choices. I just needed to look at my brilliant daughter and know that I had protected her peace. Some relatives in our extended family still call me ruthless. They gossip at family gatherings that I should have warned the bride privately sooner, or that I should have let the wedding happen just to save my mother the immense public embarrassment. But I firmly believe the public collapse was the absolute only way Evander would ever be stopped. His massive ego needed to be shattered in front of the exact audience he craved most. So, what do you think? Was I too harsh for letting the venue drop the hammer on his big day, or did he get exactly the karma he ordered? Let me know your verdict in the comments below. Thank you for tuning. If you love seeing karma delivered on a silver platter, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Until next time, keep your boundaries strictly enforced.